Okay, thank you everyone for joining today. The webinar is being recorded, and we're very thankful to have this panel today. We're going to be talking about specifically the multi-model stations and MSMEs as innovation in electric mobility with a global perspective. Our objective here is have this international perspective from Norway, because we know they have excellent and have had excellent applications in this type of transition to a sustainable mobility. And we're here joined with the Renewable Energy of Nuevo León, also the Mexican Association of, I'm forgetting the word in English.
Suppliers. Service suppliers.
Mm-hmm. And Stan Mathiesen from Dyrskab Norway, and Marcus from the Norwegian Electric Vehicle Association. So we're very thankful for everyone for joining today. And we also have the presence of the ambassador, who's going to be giving the welcoming remarks.
Thank you very much, Gabby. It's a real pleasure, as Gabby said. As you know, in Sostenibilidad Global, we are a new small NGO. We are working on promoting the just energy transition. A country like Mexico, where you have on the one hand a very significant and competitive globally automotive infrastructure and a big transportation system. We, however, face many challenges in terms of inequality. And this is a critical area when we talk about the transition to new systems that are cleaner and that address the tremendous challenge that we face, which is global change, climate change, and all the implications in different measures, from the survival of species to obviously the multiple crises that we are facing in terms of water availability, in terms of the impacts of climate change in different aspects, from droughts to hurricanes, as we live in this season in Mexico. So for us, transport is really one of the key sectors that could drive action to address this essential and fundamental challenge of climate change. And I believe Mexico has a huge opportunity in terms of promoting an agenda that is both environmentally sustainable, but also socially responsible. And we believe that Norway represents the vision that we are promoting for a country like Mexico. And Norway has set the path in terms of what is possible. We no longer have to say we can envision, we can see to the future, but rather we can show what the present is and how Norway is leading in this regard. And therefore, for us, this first webinar of our, I hope a very long series of webinars where we can bring this international experiences, successful or not successful. I think it's important to say that sometimes we insist too much on success, but sometimes, we can all learn also from failures. But I know that for Norway, it has been a long pathway, but also full of lessons and learnings that can be shared to other countries. And so that is why we are very, very grateful for the opportunity of having such leaders to share their experiences regarding the transition to electric mobility. For me, it's a special pleasure to welcome Ambassador Ragnhild Immerslund as our keynote speaker. This is a very special occasion because she is soon departing Mexico after several years of a very committed and truly and sincerely work to build the collaboration between Mexico and Norway. I have seen her work, and I have been inspired by her genuine commitment to show that a country like Norway and a country like Mexico, in spite of all their differences, can come together with a joint agenda. And she has become a true leader, a champion of the environmental agenda, the sustainability agenda, equality of women. If you search in a Google search, her name, you can see very easily how active she has been in terms of promoting an agenda that is relevant for both developed and developing countries. So I cannot be more grateful today than welcome Ambassador Immerslund. She is in her last days as ambassador in Mexico, and she will be very much missed. Obviously, she has been a great partner of our agenda and our efforts, and it's someone who is admired throughout Mexico in every life that she touches with her kindness, with her intelligence, has been transformed. So Ambassador, it's a great honor to have you here today. And I'm sorry I became a little emotional, but it's inevitable considering that you will leave. I know that Norway will have a great representative, but you will leave a very special place in the heart of all Mexicans. Thank you for being here, for all your work, and we welcome some remarks regarding this panel.
Thank you so much, Isabel, and that was an incredible introduction. And as you say, it's emotional days for me, so that it's hard to follow that introduction. But good morning in Mexico, and good afternoon to all our friends in Norway that are joining us in this webinar. And it's really a great pleasure to be with you. And first of all, I want to thank Isabel Studer and her team for their initiative in organizing this webinar on a topic that has really become, that's been close to my heart all the time, but recently we really felt that it's a great opportunity for closer cooperation and sharing of experiences between Mexico and Norway. So that's why it's also I'm really happy that this is something that we could do in one of my final days here in Mexico. And Isabel has also been an incredible ally for the Norwegian Embassy in our sustainability project. And I remember the first time I saw Isabel when the former foreign minister was presenting his electromobility strategy. And I immediately said, she's the one we have to partner up with, then something may happen. And now we already see that my instincts were right. As I said, electromobility is now finally, I would say, becoming a key priority for the Mexican government. So it is a momentum now that I'm really happy that we are all grasping and acting on, because as we know, politics comes in waves, and we have to act when suddenly new doors open. So I hope that this webinar will be a contribution. And looking back at the shared history between Norway and Mexico, transport was actually one of the reasons for why Norway established one of our first embassies in Mexico. We are celebrating next year 120 years of bilateral cooperation and of bilateral relations. And the maritime industry and the maritime transport links between our two countries was one of the reasons for why Mexico was actually one of the first embassies we opened after Norway got our independence in 1905. And of course, we will continue with the maritime sector. We are promoting green shipping and green ports and everything that is linked to the maritime sector. But I'm very excited to see now how we can build on that past cooperation to pursue a greener future by revolutionizing the way we move people and goods through electromobility. Electromobility is very much in the forefront of Norway's effort to promote a more sustainable world. And at the same time, I believe it can promote important trade opportunities and closer economic ties between our two countries. And Norway, as an oil producing nation, which Mexico, of course, also is, we have a particular responsibility, I feel, in making sure that transport becomes greener and more sustainable. And as you will hear this morning, and I'm sure that Markus will share more about the public policies in Norway, Norway has become a leader in the zero emission transport, which is kind of not natural because Norway is a very cold country where traditionally you would think that batteries do not last long. It's a mountainous country, which also means that electric cars use the battery, energy in the battery, faster than in flat, warmer climates. But despite of all of that, and also the fact that we are producing oil, one would not think that it should be the public policy of a government to revolutionize the transport sector and promote electromobility the way it has. But we did, and it's all through public policies, because these changes, as you know, they do not come naturally. For the public to change their attitude, you need sound and specific public policies. And I think that Markus will talk more about that. So it's with very keen interest that we've seen that the President, Claudia Sheinbaum, is now also giving this topic a great priority. And then this coming together, Norway having tried to promote this for some years now here in Mexico and not really gained traction. Now we do feel that there is interest not only from civil society and the new associations and the car industry here in Mexico, but also on the government side, which is key for things actually to change and to happen. So I will just now mention a few of the initiatives that we have been doing over the last 6 months, actually. It kind of started in January when two experts, Markus and his colleague from the Norwegian EV Association, came to Mexico and spent a week here and had meetings with counterparts. And I believe that visit is actually kind of one of the reasons for why we are now doing this webinar. And it's great to see that Markus is now here and that we can continue the dialogue with him and his association virtually, so they can continue to share their experiences and their advice on how to advance also in Mexico. And also happy to share that together with the Swedish Embassy, another initiative that we did was that we co-organized a hackathon with the UNAM, which is the major university, as you all know, here in Mexico, where students from Mexico City, Guadalajara, and Monterrey were invited to develop sustainable mobility proposals for their city during the World Cup next year. And this is also something that we see that it's extremely important to join forces with academia and scientists and the sector that promote innovation. Also to develop local solutions, because every country is different and every city has different needs. And also, so that was also a great way to kind of bring great minds together and get specific proposals on the table. And the winner of that hackathon received a substantial prize, and we are now evaluating how to help other participants in that hackathon to develop their proposals, the proposals that we find worth supporting. So we hope that this webinar can also continue to build on these first efforts that we have had, and that together we can strengthen the cooperation between Norway, the Norwegian actors, and the Mexican advocates for electric mobility towards a greener transport also in Mexico. And as you know, I'm also a great personal advocate for electromobility. My family and I, we brought one of the first electrical cars produced in Norway to Mexico, our Buddy. And it has really become a celebrity in the city. And also the way, I must say that also we recently learned that actually the Buddy has served as an inspiration for this new car that Mexico is now developing, Olinia, which when I saw it for the first time, I saw, oh, that looks very much like the Buddy. And now I also learned that the designers behind Olinia actually had been in Norway, worked in Norway, and knew of both the Buddy and Think. So it has served as an inspiration already without us really knowing. But to show that as a demonstration of the interest that I feel now also more in the general people's mind in Mexico towards electromobility, we feel it with our Buddy when we drive around, that every day when I use the car, at least 10 people come and ask me, where did you buy this car? Where did you get this car? Where can I get it? So it's clearly something that people are opening up their minds. There's a shift going on. And this is something, a momentum, as I said in the beginning, that we all have to grasp and to build on. So I'm extremely excited that you're organizing this seminar. I'm very happy that I was able to give the opening remarks, and look forward to listening in at least for a little while and to see how you are developing further the cooperation. And I trust me that I will make sure that when I leave, my successor and the embassy here will definitely continue to ensure that electromobility remains one of the key priorities for the embassy in the cooperation between Mexico and Norway. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Imerslund. I think it's you are a source of inspiration, right? Driving around that Buddy. I think that exactly what you have shown is that people, facing these very complex and difficult challenges, what we need is that inspiration. And so we thank you for that, for your inspiration, for your hard work. I also want to say that, as you know, our partnership for sustainable mobility for all is growing very rapidly. We already have over 20 members, 7 states. We have the largest transportation associations in Mexico, from the producers, users. I'm here in Cancun, where the 25 annual Congress is taking place of the National Association of Private Transportation Owners. And I believe that there is a quite deal of excitement in terms of bringing together these different actors so that we can promote solutions that address some of the challenges. I believe that, as you mentioned, it's not only the challenges but the opportunities. As you mentioned, in the collaboration of two very different countries in a way, but very similar in another way, being oil producers, both Norway and Mexico. You show that there are conditions where leadership can detonate and catalyze the transformation that we all need. So thank you for your words, and thank you for your inspiration. And obviously, we would love to continue the conversation with you, whether you are in Norway, just visiting. I know you will be visiting Mexico, so we make sure that we keep you updated about this amazing agenda that you have been promoting very actively. So for the rest of the panel, we have also very exciting topics to address, but especially leaders. I want to thank Marcus Nielsen for his support all along to organize this panel, and also obviously our other speakers from Mexico. I don't know if Estienne is still here, because I don't see you, but I think Estienne, are you here?
I am.
Just to make sure that you have not disconnected. Estienne Mattison, also thank you very much for your interest in sharing your perspectives, particularly in terms of how the private sector can see these multimodal stations as an opportunity, business opportunity especially, and obviously our colleagues Rocio Ramirez and David Hernandez for your presence. So Gabby, I'll let you moderate the session. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. We're now gonna head over to this overviews by each participant, and we can start with Stian. Stian is a communications manager at Drivkraft Norge. Drivkraft Norge is an association that represents the interests of fuel and energy companies in Norway. With over a decade of experience in communications and public affairs, he specializes in the renewable energy and e-mobility sectors, including the intricacies of generating and transporting electricity and tackling the challenges industries face as they electrify and decarbonize their operations. So, welcome, Stian, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I actually think that Marcus can present first, though, because I think he'll give a sort of more general overview about e-mobility in Norway, and then I'll go a little bit more into the specifics about charging, if that's okay.
Perfect. Yes. Marcus, the floor is yours. Marcus is a Norwegian professional known for his work in promoting electric vehicles adaptation and his leadership roles in organizations like Changemaker Norge and the Norwegian EV Association. He has been involved in policy advocacy and campaigns related to sustainable electric mobility, including initiatives in emerging EV economies. So thank you again, Marcus, for joining.
Thank you so much. Just a question first. Do you see my screen now? It's okay?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Perfect. Thank you. First of all, my name is Marcus. I work at the Norwegian EV Association. It's an association of EV owners or EV users. So we represent around 120,000 individual members that are a member of the association and kind of giving us the mission of advocating and promoting electric mobility, both towards the government, towards decision makers, and also in cooperation with the private sector. And of course, we are doing a lot to help all the new EV drivers in Norway to adapt to this new technology. And I also work in a project trying to share these experiences globally, including in Mexico. And I just want to, I'm going to be short on that, but because we have not that much time, but I want to thank Ragnhild, the ambassador, for the great work that also the government of Norway is doing in sharing these experiences. I think it's extremely important that we, in the situation we are in Norway now, trying to share as much of what we learned on the processes that we have had leading up to the situation now with almost 100% electric sales in the new car segment for Norway. It's an honor to be here. Thank you, Isabel and Gabi, for inviting me. It was even better being in Mexico in person in January, so I hope to come back as well. But as a substitute now, I really appreciate being here online with you guys. I think my task was to try to talk a bit about the charging situation in Norway, but I will still go into a bit of the broader perspective first, just to give a broad overview. This is the statistics for EV market share in the new car sales in Norway. At the moment, so far this year, we have sold, or 93% of all the cars sold in Norway are battery electric. The target from the government and from the parliament and from all of us working on this was 100% battery electric sales in 2025. Of course, everybody who knows a bit about percentage and mathematics understands we can't reach that for 2025 completely. But still, we hope that we may reach 100% car sales for some of the months, or at least in the end of the year. It can happen. So far in June, 97% of all cars sold are battery electric vehicles. So it's really closing in. And that means that the situation in Norway is now that 1 out of 4 cars on the roads of Norway are battery electric. So even though every car is sold is battery electric, it takes some time to change the whole fleet. So that's kind of why we think it's important to accelerate the sales so that we can get the transition done over the next years. I also think it's important to just, when we talk with great friends and colleagues in a country like Mexico, to just acknowledge the differences in size. So when we say that 1 out of 4 cars are battery electric, it means around 800,000, 850,000 cars that are electric on the roads in Norway. That would be quite a bigger number in Mexico if we would look at that. But the thing is that all cars on the roads should be electric. And there's a lot of ways to do that. And the ambassador said that I was probably going to talk a bit about the policies. I can do that if there's some questions, but the plans today, we're talking mostly about the charging policies. But she's completely right. You need a package of different smart and well-designed policies to make sure this transition happen. It doesn't happen by itself. But when it comes to charging, what we know from Norway is that 80% of the total charging is done at home, which means that most people charge when the car is parked, and that's the best way of charging an EV. And knowing that, it could be easy to say, okay, then we don't need to build out so much fast charging on the roads and on the highways because most of the charging is on the home. But we also know that 90% of every EV driver in Norway have fast charged in the last 12 months. So even though they don't do it all the time and they prefer to charge at home, they are completely, it's a complete necessity to be able to charge when you're driving a long distance. If you don't have a fast charging network, you won't buy an EV. That's as simple as that. The development in Norway, the first thing we did was kind of building fast charging network on the main corridors of transportation in Norway. Stian is going to talk a bit more about that, so I'm not going to go into that. But what we saw then, we had some public tenders and there was some public funding in the beginning to ensure that this build out started. But what I think is important to understand is that we didn't fund, or the public funding was more or less ending in 2017, when we had around 1,000 chargers, fast chargers on the roads. After that, we have built up to, now we're around 10,000 fast chargers in the roads in Norway without any public funding. So it's important to understand that yes, there might be some need for some public funding or some other ways of financing these first steps of building an infrastructure, but it will develop by itself or with the market after a while. And I have also challenged Stian to talk a bit about that afterwards, because from their perspective, that will be interesting to hear. In Norway, the starting point of charging was on the fast charging network was small stations like these, maybe 2 fast chargers with 50 kilowatt effect each. And that was a good start. But what we saw is that quite soon when the EV sales started to increase, it became 2 small stations and people ended in lines and in queues. So this is how a fast charging station in Norway looks like now. This is a Circle K, formerly a traditional petrol station in a company in Norway. Now you see that they have built their chargers, the fast chargers, in the best spot where the drivers are arriving, and the fuel pumps way back there, so you have to go on the behind the station to find them. You see they have solar panels and also a battery storage system that could help on peak hours. And then you also have a good service opportunity with the restaurant in the middle. So it's going to be easy for people to charge, and you can it's going to be easy for people to find the chargers. There are still some challenges, and I think it's important to also take those into consideration, because I think a lot of the charging can happen and it will happen and it's great, but we have seen a challenge of the infrastructure not being good enough, or the upkeep of the infrastructure is not being good enough. From our surveys, we see that about half of the EV drivers experience that the fast chargers don't work occasionally or more often when they use it. This is a big challenge for the consumer, and it makes the transition more difficult for the consumers, and that can be a challenge when it comes to the popularity of the policy. And we also have seen that 40% say that they experience charging queues occasionally or more often. But this number is actually decreasing quite well now the last couple of years. So this is becoming a smaller and smaller problem. But one of the challenges for the charging operators is to ensure that the availability of the chargers are there, and also that they are upkept well enough. For us, charging is not just a service that's provided for some customers. It's critical infrastructure. It's what we need if you want to electrify the whole transportation fleet. The people need to have the ability to charge when they're driving. So my conclusion on this very short and brief introduction on charging is it's okay to think big. In the beginning, you cannot think big enough, because when the EVs are coming, then the stations needs to be built bigger. You might not need to build more than 2 chargers each place in the beginning, but plan for more. I think that's also something that hopefully Stian will touch upon. So it makes it possible to scale up fast. And then remember that the ones who are driving this change is the EV drivers, is the consumers. They're literally driving this change, and they need to be included in designing how charging infrastructure should be built, so that you ensure that it's user-friendly from day one, and that the people who are actually moving over to electric transportation are happy when they're doing it and satisfied with it, so they don't go back again. So that's kind of my short introduction to that, and I hope that it was fast enough and we can give some time for Stian now. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Marcus. And I'm going to project your presentation now.
Thank you. So I'll talk about some learnings from Norwegian charge point operators. I've been working with charging in Norway for about 10 years, and also doing other things in the energy sector. But I've seen this industry grow over a long period of time.
Sorry, Marcus, could you stop sharing really quick so I can access the sharing? I think you're in mute. There you go. Thank you so much.
That's good. And then
Go ahead, Stian. Thank you. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
yes, I can see it at least. You can move straight on to the next slide. So I represent Drivkraft Norway. We're an industry organization for companies that sell fuel and energy for transport and industry. So regular gas stations and also charge point operators. Some of our members are purely charge point operators. Some do both. They operate gas stations with charge points. And our members cover 95% of Norwegian fast charging. So you see their logos on the right side. Most of them you probably don't know, except for Tesla, and I know Circle K also has operations in Mexico. But this is the majority of the fast charging market in Norway, and they are members of our organization, and we work on their behalf. You can go to the next slide. This photo is from 2011, April 2011, when the first fast charger was opened in Norway. It was a single Chademo 50 kilowatt charger. Now, 14 years later, if you go to the next slide, things look more like this. Like Marcus showed you, high-powered chargers are replacing fuel pumps at gas stations and getting the prime spots. And this has been done now for several years without public funding. So the question is, how did we get here? And if we go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about this public funding that Marcus also talked about. So this started in 2015, the public funding program. You can see all the main highways on the map there on the side. The roads are marked in different colors. That's different parts of the funding scheme. So the government's requirements were that whoever got the funds, the support to build, had to build 2 50 kilowatt charge points, and they had to be maximum 50 kilometers apart along these corridors. So you would be given the corridor of like between Oslo and Kristiansand, or Oslo and Bergen, and so on, between the big cities in Norway to begin with. And for 2015, 2016, when the first sort of major corridors were awarded, it resulted in 65 new charge points being built, and it cost the government 14 million Norwegian crowns, NOK, which at the time equaled about 1.75 million US dollars. And the operator that was awarded a distance, they had to build that entire distance by themselves, the entire corridor. There couldn't be any sharing. So if you go to the next slide, this led to a few companies having a benefit. This company, which I worked for at the time, got the majority of the funding. They were called Fortum Charge and Drive. And they were a subsidiary of a large energy company. They had deals with McDonald's, with grocery store chains, with gas stations and municipalities. So they could basically build everywhere. For the traditional gas station operators, they were much more restrained because they had to build at their gas stations. So they couldn't meet this requirement from the government that you needed to have charging stations every 50 kilometers along the corridor. So for these fundings that were given in 2015, 2016, it was for the most part energy companies that had set up subsidiaries doing charging that got this funding. You can go to the next slide. Some of the challenges for Norwegian charge point operators now in 2025 is that the funding requirements from back in 2015, 2016 to build chargers every 50 kilometers, that's now very outdated, because nowadays the cars, they can go 400, 500 kilometers. Back then they could do maybe 100 kilometers. So you really needed fast chargers all over the place. Nowadays, you need much bigger hubs, but they can be further apart. You don't need to have them every 50 kilometers. So what's happening in the last couple of years is that quite a few of these stations that were given funding 10 years ago are now being closed because they're in no way profitable to operate. So some of the ones that are still not upgraded, they still have the 250 kilowatt chargers that they had, or that were built back in 2015, 2016. Some of those are being closed. And that's because, the charge point operators, they need to look for profit, just like every other company. So they're closing some of these not profitable stations. For some people, that becomes a challenge. Like local taxi drivers might rely on these charging stations, but very few other people actually use them. Another challenge is new technology like card payment terminals that require retrofit or replacing charging stations. And now you might think card payment terminals is not new technology, but within the charging station, within the charging world, if we can call it that, card payment terminals haven't been available for that long. Back in 2015, 2016, you couldn't just buy a card payment terminal and put it on your charging station because that integration wasn't available. It's only in the last few years that has become widely available for charge point operators. And now the EU are demanding that charging stations must have card payment terminals, which is a good thing because consumers really want it and it's user-friendly. It's very good. But it's a challenge for the charge point operators that were first movers because they now have to retrofit, which is okay. That's not too costly. But in some cases, the chargers that were built 10 years ago, they can't be retrofitted. So then you need to replace the entire unit, which is very costly. And then in some cases, like I mentioned, that ends up with a station being closed down instead of being, just left as it is because of this demand that it must have card payment terminals. And like Marcus mentioned, in Norway, about 80% of people charge at home. So charging is not the same as fuel sales at a gas station. There's much less energy to be sold at public chargers because most of the energy comes from home. And the margins are very small because it's very expensive to build fast chargers. And I've worked previously at a charge point operator called Recharge. They're the biggest in the Nordics and also in Norway. And they've been very public about the fact that even though they've been doing this for about 15 years now, they still haven't ever made any money. They believe that they will when the market keeps growing, but the margins are very small, and you need to have quite a long what do you call it? You need to be patient before you actually start making money, and you need to have quite a lot of funding to be able to build the infrastructure because it's very costly. Okay, I tried to keep that as short as possible. Thank you. And usually I promote like our organization's social media here at the end, but we only publish things in Norwegian. So I took the opportunity to promote my own LinkedIn instead, because I only write in English, and I write a lot about e-mobility, and I share insights into the Norwegian charging industry. So feel free to follow me on LinkedIn if you want to. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Stian, so much. I think it's very enriching, both perspective from Marcus and Stian, to see how the transition has been made in Norway and all of the advancements that you have done. And it's very enriching for Mexico to have that perspective and to see what we could possibly be facing once we start doing this transitions as well. I'm not gonna head to Rocio Ramirez. She is our representative of the Renewable Energy Agency of the state of Nuevo León. She is a renewable energy engineer, and she has worked in Schneider Electric as a laboratory technician, and she currently heads as Director of Strategic Projects in the Renewable Energy of Nuevo León. So thank you, Rocio. The floor is yours, and I'll project your presentation as well.
Thank you for having me, and thank you, our friends from Norwegia and David and Dr. Isabel Studer for the invitation to be here. So I'm going to be talking about the perspective of the state of Nuevo León in sustainable mobility. As Gabi mentioned, I belong to the Renewable Energy Agency, which belongs to the Ministry of Economy of the state of Nuevo León. So we have this, first of all, I wanted to introduce this energy outlook so you can get an idea of what is the state of Nuevo León and what it represents to Mexico overall. So we are located at the northern part of Mexico. We are currently the largest consumer of electricity in the country, and our growth continues every single year. Our growth rate is the double as the average in the whole country. And we are actually exporters of electricity. 2/3 of the electricity that we produce, we consume it locally, and the rest is exported to other states. So this is only because of the nearshoring effect of all the new investments that came to Nuevo León, but we also need to account other energy demands such as electromobility. And also a fun fact is that we have a similar population as Norwegia as a whole country. We are around 5.5 million people. So you will see the next few years and you will be impressed by some other data. Also, it's very important to see how is our economic outlook. Currently, 99% of our economic units are micro, small, and medium enterprises. And regarding the staff they employ, although the large sector employs more people, 43%, altogether, small, medium, and micro enterprises employ the majority of the people here in Nuevo León. So we still have this sector as the big part of our economy. So it's really important that we promote their growth, their professionalization. And in the Ministry of Economy, we have programs that support small and medium enterprises. Now, it's very important that we talk about the growth of electromobility. As Marcus showed us his graphs in Norwegia, how the electromobility has been growing every single year. The same is happening here in Mexico. Even if we have little incentives, in the last couple of years, we have seen a increase in the registries. This data that I am showing is from the Institute of Vehicle Control of the state. These are not sales, because INEGI, which is the Statistics Institute in Mexico, they don't have the bigger car manufacturers, for example, Tesla or BYD. So we have that data in the state, and we can see that every single year the registers are almost doubling. And if we continue to go like this, on the next slide, we will see that even if nothing changes, if the market continues as it is, by 2030, which will be the end of the presidential mandate of President Claudia Sheinbaum, we will have 6 times the amount of electric automobiles, trucks, and motorcycles that we have right now. So we need to take care of this new energy demand, and as well as invest in infrastructure as a state, and also request these necessities to federal authorities. And well, this is really surprising, because Marcus showed that currently you have 10,000 fast charging stations in Orilla. We only have 2. Well, a couple of months we had 2, but recently a company invested in 4 new fast charging stations. So right now we have 6, but still 6, if you compare to 10,000, we still have a lot of room to grow. And something that we want to promote is the installation of fast charging station on the principal roads that go to the United States. We are really close to McAllen and to Laredo, and there's currently no charging station. Only there's one Tesla, but Tesla is only compatible with their own vehicles, so it doesn't it cannot charge other vehicles. So if the trip to the US is around 250 or 300 kilometers, most cars don't have that autonomy to reach the United States. So they will have a lot of range anxiety, and we don't want that. So we want to have, or to promote, the installation in these corridors. As Tian mentioned, that at the beginning in Orilla, you had an initiative to have 1 charging station every 50 kilometers. So we want to do something similar and promote it in strategic locations. And what you may be asking right now, what is the state doing to promote the electromobility? Well, there are a couple of initiatives and programs. One that was announced after the Trump administration announced the importation tariffs. The governor of Nuevo León announced payroll tax deductions for new investments of electromobility companies here in the state, and this includes OEMs, Tier 1, 2, and 3. Also, this week, it was announced a new program that is called Impulso, which is to impulse the new small and medium enterprises in the state with green financing for sustainable loans. And these are very blunt loans, are up to 15 million pesos, which is around $800,000. And it's a financing program that it's easy to pay. And also, there is an exception from endorsement fees for electric and hybrid vehicles. So this is another incentives for new car users that want to buy a new car. If you buy an electric or a hybrid, you don't have to pay these endorsement fees. And well, what are we doing at the agency? We are promoting electromobility with these 3 projects. The first one is a strategic mapping of locations for electric service stations where it is attractive to install these chargers. It has to do with the projections of growth in certain areas, as well as the quality of the electric grid. Because right now we are having a situation with new load centers trying to connect. There's limited capacity. So we have this data where we can, with some help, of course, get this strategic map. The next one is promoting the installation of the charging infrastructure in these areas. And we are trying to coordinate, of course, with CFE, which is a local authority. Well, actually, it's in the whole country in terms of electricity.
And lastly, promote the electrification of transport. This means public transport. We're working with the Ministry of Mobility and Urban Planning, as well as with doing workshops with companies that have cars and want to transition to electric mobility. And one very interesting topic that we have been discussing at the Sostenibilidad Global is the multimodal charging stations. So we made this research here in the agency where we gathered all the gas stations that we currently have in the state. There are currently 800, and most of them belong to 2 companies. So actually, one of them is really interested in installing, as well as having the conventional gasoline stations, adding electric stations in their real estate. And David will tell us more about these new regulations that will allow for this transition. And another interesting scheme for small and medium enterprises is providing this as a service to their users. This has many benefits for them. For example, they can have an improved corporate image, they can increase their sales, their customer traffic. And also another benefit is that by having charging infrastructure, they can be part of a public charging network. So if I go in my app and I search for a charging station, I can see that, I don't know, a Starbucks or a restaurant or a hotel has these services. So it's more likely that I will go to that establishment. And well, this is my contact. Unfortunately, I don't have a cat as Marcus, but if you have any questions, you can email me, and also look up for me on LinkedIn. My name is Rocio Ramirez, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Rocio, and thank you for the overview of Nuevo León. And I think it's very, like you mentioned, interesting to note the similarities with Norway. And it's the exact reason why we're having these types of conversations, to see what we can learn from other countries and other cities, and we can implement. So I think there's a great possibility of synergies and lessons learned. So thank you so much. I'm now gonna head over to David. David has more than 20 years of experience in national and international companies and institutions, where he develops and implements systems, tools, and best practices in risk management, industrial safety, and sustainability. Since January 2019, he has been General Director of the strategic consulting firm Sustentabilidad Empresarial, where he provides economic, social, and environmental value, implementing business and organizational solutions for adequate risk management and sustainability. He is here in behalf of the Mexican Association of Service Station Suppliers, and he will give us a general overview of how businesses influence and what AMPES currently does. So thank you, David, for being here. And I'm projecting your presentation as well.
Thank you, Gabriela. Thank you, everyone. Good morning in Mexico and good afternoon in Norway. As you know, I represent to the Mexican Association of Suppliers, NEXPIS. We have more than 33 years of presence in Mexico, and we bring together leading companies specialized in all the stages of a gas station project. For example, construction, design, manufacturing, distribution of equipment, consulting, chemical analysis, software development, between others. And of course, we integrate solutions that bring together quality standards and best practices, international best practices. Of course, we integrate the Mexican and the international regulatory and legal standards to comply with all and to benefit all society. We contribute to mobility in all the country and in many other countries in Latin America. Next, please. Yeah. We are more than 70 companies in Mexico, and we bring more than 3,500 specialized professionals, for example, lawyers, engineers, chemicals, software developers, between others. Next, please. Of course, we can do these efforts alone. So by this reason, we fulfill this mission, building strategic partnerships with public and private sectors. For example, the Mexican regulators, the government offices, universities, industry associations, and non-government organizations. Please, next. Which is our market? We are in Mexico. This is a graphic that shows how many gas stations we have per state. For example, Baja California Norte, the first on the left side. Baja California Norte has more than 600 gas stations, and they attend more than 6,000 people per gas station, and more than 3,600 vehicles per gas station. It's an example. Around the world, around the country, we have this kind of information. For example, in Mexico City, we have 3,090 gas stations, and each gas station attend more than 23,000 people and more than 16,000 cars. So it's a big opportunity for an energy transition. And some other states are important. Mexican state or Mexico state, Nuevo León, Puebla, Querétaro. There are some states that has more than 500 gas stations that be converted to or combine gas and electricity for cars. Next, please. Some qualities that we identify to promote electromobility. For example, if a state has border, it's a big opportunity. If a state has tourism or industry and commerce, or a highly populated state, maybe this state has qualities to promote or to accelerate electromobility and infrastructure. If we can see Baja California Norte, Mexico City, Chihuahua, Coahuila, Mexico State, Guanajuato, Querétaro, Jalisco, and some other states, Nuevo León, has opportunities to accelerate, to move first in electromobility. Next, please. Oh, finally, we are working in AMPES. We're working with government to promote policy, to promote permissions and regulations. The policy is ready to move the transition. The new energy office in Mexico for permissions, the Comisión Nacional de Energía, is going to be defined. The permission to install e-mob stations will be defined between August and September of this year, and the safety and environmental regulations will be published by this year, ending this year. So I think the conditions are ready or almost ready to start as an accelerated transition and infrastructure in electromobility. Next, please. But we think we need, and we will thank some support requirements, for example, business cases, technical specifications for design and installation of electromobility stations, and some strategies to accelerate the MOB. So this is the conversation that I want to show you. Thank a lot, and I am here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. For sure, all of this requires active participation from different sectors and different stakeholders. So I think it's very important to have all of these points of views, and so, also the knowledge of the regulations and how everything is going forward here in Mexico. So thank you so much, David, for that overview. I know we're past time, but we do want to give the floor to any questions that you might have from the audience as well. And so I leave the floor open for questions.
If you want to raise your hand, and while you do, I just want to thank everyone today. I think this is the start of a conversation, as we can see, Marcus, from the vision, and then Stian, how this has been progressing from the perspective of private sector and the importance, critical importance of public policy, and the challenges that you still face, to the opportunities that we see in a very big country where there is a huge population. And even though in terms of percentages, we don't see that there is as significant of a growth as we can see in Norway. Obviously, in Mexico, as Nuevo León cases show, is relevant in certain regions of the country, and the market needs, the demand is there. So we need to respond, and I think it's good news. Also, when you look at the potential market, as David demonstrated, it's a huge opportunity. And Stian, Marcus, we would love to see how we can build opportunities for cooperation, especially considering the regulations in Norway and the challenges, but also the ways, the lessons that you have learned, especially with this transition, the multimodal, maybe. It's one way of addressing some of the issues that infrastructure companies have been facing, as Stian mentioned. Yes, Marcus, please.
Yes, completely aware of the time, so I'm not going to spend much time. But I just also want to say, first of all, it was great to hear from both Rocio and David. It's so important that both from the government side and also from the private sector is really into this. And but my point now maybe is also just kind of not looking at all the difficulties, but also look at the opportunities, and also think that to start somewhere is better than to wait for the perfect. And I think from our last conversations, both Isabel and a lot of other people in Mexico, I think going for some of the important corridors first, trying to kind of get it moving, because I think charging in EVs is a classical chicken and the egg dilemma. You need to have EVs to get a good charging network, but you need to have a good charging network to get EVs, people buying EVs. So you kind of have to start somewhere, because if you start with some charging somewhere where it's possibly a good idea, then you can get some people or more people to buy EVs in that area, and then you will grow on that. So I would just say that, like, don't look at the most difficult states or difficult areas, but look at the easiest first. And I think what David presented was very good on that, to look at where is the best market opportunities first and go for them. And then, of course, not only talking about charging, because charging alone will not fix it. You need policies to make it easier to buy an EV or to change from an internal combustion to an EV for the consumers as well. So, but yeah, thank you so much for this conversation. It was really interesting and looking forward to continue it.
Thank you, Marcus. I just would like to also underscore the leadership of Rocio and Nuevo León in terms of thinking ahead, not only where to place the infrastructure, but also the demand. And clearly, Nuevo León is responding to a demand growth. I think that's a very good news. But then you also, in a country that is facing limitations in terms of energy availability, electricity, it is very strategic for Nuevo León. And I want to just congratulate Rocio for her leadership and the government of Nuevo León's vision for addressing the supply side in terms of energy, to making sure that this market demand that is growing so fast, is based also, is met by having electricity generation that is enough to make sure that the transition is successful. So I don't know if there are any questions, Gaby. We're just projecting here, the partners that are now working to promote this agenda. I know that Diana Paez was here from the William Davidson Institute and other partners. So Marcus and Stian, we hope we can work together to continue the conversation. Sí, Rocio.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to add that thank you for sharing all your knowledge with us. I think we can have really invaluable knowledge from your experience. And as Marcus said, focus on what we can do. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can learn from what has worked for you, and hope to continue on these conversations. You are welcome to Monterrey whenever you can. You can visit Mexico. We can have you here, and really excited for this collaboration with you.
Since Rocio has mentioned this, I think that several times, I think Stian and Marcus, we have to pin down a date in the not far future to have you visiting and Nuevo León. And I think that we can find very specific and enriching ways of collaboration. Sí, Marcus.
Oh, I was just messaging it. Norway is on the way to the World Cup first time since 1998. So we hope to get the group stages in Mexico, and then we'll join you, obviously.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we're hoping, that the match is taking place in Nuevo León, so then you will have the perfect excuse. That's excellent.
Absolutely.
We hope that Norway makes it all the way, to the finals. All right. Well, thank you so much. I want to make a special thanks to Gaby Zapata, who has been a force behind the organization of this great webinar, and also Miranda Fernandez. They work really as a great team. And obviously, Stian, Marcus, Rocio, and David. I think we have a lot of conversations pending, and I appreciate the great leadership and the willingness and disposition of all of you to work together. I think collaboration should be the new value, universal value, so that we address many of the challenges that we have. So, muchísimas gracias a todas y todos. Y buenas tardes. Gracias,
Before we
Marc.
sign off, I know we're past time, but if we could all just take a quick picture, and if we could just open cameras for all of the viewers that we have, it would be great. So, if not, thank you, Vladimir. Thank you so much. Okay. So, at the count of 3, I'll smile. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone. Oh, can we just take another one?
Porque ahí se acaba de sumar ahí. Sí. A ver, ahí lee. aparece otra vez porque
No, but
ya
bueno.
se-
ahí va.
ahí está, ahí está.
Ahí voy,
ahí voy. Es que no me peiné.
Ah, no pasa nada, no
On the
pasa
count of 3 again. 1, 2, 3. Wait. Keep smiling. 1. Perfect. Thank you so much,
Gracias,
everyone,
Gaby.
for joining and for these.
Gracias. Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Gracias,
Thank you so
Gaby.
much. Bye.
Gracias a todos. Hasta luego.
Gracias,
Bye.
Marcus. Gracias, Dan.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.